Welcome to Grace for the Tryhard, a place where we tryhards can be reminded of the grace we've been given and be empowered to walk in it every day. Do you ever feel like no matter how hard you try, you aren't good enough? Have you struggled with shame and want to experience more freedom in your walk with Christ? Do you feel inspired and empowered when you hear other people's stories of transformation and healing? If your answer is yes to any of those questions, I'm right there with you. Being empowered to live and work out of grace is possible, and here we are learning how to do that together. No need to show up polished, poised, or perfect. Come as you are and join us as we experience God's grace together. Hello, welcome back to Grace for the Tryhard. If you're here on YouTube, you could see BB is back again.
Guilty.
Well, guess who's back? Back again.
Guess who's back? Guess who's back? Guess who's back? Guess who's back? Guess who's back?
Okay.
Today's podcast is sponsored by M&M. Love
You know
bro.
which one.
M&Ms, the ones that are chocolate.
The ones that wrap.
Okay, anyway, sorry. We just got off real crazy. So today we're going to do another chit-chat episode where we talk about life and laugh a little bit and have a good time. You guys ready for that?
I am.
We'll see.
I have a tentative name for this that I came up with today. I don't know if we're going to like it or not, because it could have a potentially negative connotation.
Oh, no.
But between two B's. You know, take it for what it is.
Wow, my mind went through a lot.
Take it for what it is. I feel like there was a second one I had too that sounded less like that.
Yeah.
And I can't remember it.
Between
but
two
I do kind of
Bs.
like just what it's just take it for what it is, you know?
And we could have little bumblebees as like the...
Yeah.
That'll be like Bryce Brandon the bumblebee and I'll be a little flower.
Oh, we're on our way to the flower.
Yes. To pollinate.
You could do BLB. Let's just make sure that doesn't stand for something bad.
I'm looking up BLB, see what comes up.
Well, I think it's just baseball, right? No, that's MLB.
Yep.
So on our last maybe chit chat with BLB or chit chat BLB, who knows what we're gonna call it yet?
Between two B's.
I don't like it between two B's. Anyway, on our last chit chat, we talked about going to Florida. Yes. And we did go to Florida, guys. We made it. We came back. We did drive through the night, and I am for it when I'm not driving.
Yeah, I tried to convince Lindsay to take you guys there with us. We could do a cute little podcast in the car,
Ooh.
but turns out that was vacation time.
And
Checks out.
Bryce got a little grumpy at the end of that car
Did that
ride.
happen? Oh, that did
So that might be a version that people don't want to see. At least people who aren't
Sorry,
close
I'm just trying
friends.
to be real. I liked the drive when I was driving. I'm not a good long-term passenger. I just get very antsy. I don't like stale car air.
Yeah, I know. It's
Not a
rough.
fan of that.
Oh, I love
That's
it.
hard to fix when you're
Yum,
going,
yum, yum.
you know, most long drives, you're going like 75 or something on an interstate road. So it's hard to get airflow in there. So I was getting a little crotchety, okay?
I don't
Admittedly. Little grandpa crotchety.
That's what I was thinking.
I saw you posted a video of him.
Yes,
Or it's in
No.
the actual video of it.
it is. Yep.
That was
So
I
amazing.
do like that.
Watch our last chit chat.
Yes.
It'll be like, watch it. Don't just listen to it.
right,
You'll love it.
all audio listeners, all podcast people, go watch the video on YouTube. You're gonna
Yeah.
crack up because there's some added
Also,
features.
you should check out our Instagram page.
You should.
What's our name on Instagram?
Grace for the Tryhard.
You heard it
Very
here first.
simple. FOR, not the number 4.
Oh, good
That's a very
point.
millennial thing to do, is add like
Yeah.
a number in.
Right.
That
Yeah.
stinks.
And we don't want to be that.
Speaking of millennials, as you can see, I'm wearing ankle socks today. And I am very pro ankle sock. But I know
Yeah.
the Gen Zers are very anti ankle.
Yeah, they like the taller socks and push them down. But I don't want that tan line. So have you thought about that, Gen Z?
I do
Let us
remember
know.
being like in maybe 4th grade when like ankle socks, or what are those? calf socks.
I don't think they call them calf socks.
Mid-length.
I think those are just socks.
These are just socks.
Okay, just
right?
socks. Those were, everyone wore those. And you even folded them. Did you guys ever fold your socks?
Mhm.
I did that.
I had my moments.
But then those were out and ankle socks were in. And it was
Show off those
weird
ankles.
to wear those. And now it's back again.
Yeah, there's a tension between the length of socks and then the color of socks.
Ooh.
White socks, black socks. It goes back and forth.
What is it now?
It's white socks now. It has been for a few years. I anticipate it staying that way. But there's just a very sudden moment where, oh crap, everyone's wearing black socks now.
I feel pretty powerful in a gray sock myself. I have 2 pairs that are a light gray, and I just feel unique and powerful.
Well, back to our Florida convo.
Oh, right.
Any highlight? I got a little off topic with the socks.
Orange World.
Orange World was a great
Huge.
time. That was our last stop in Florida.
Biggest orange I've ever seen.
I think it's the biggest orange in the world. World's largest
not
orange.
not an orange you can consume.
It's not
True.
real.
It's a building.
It's a building.
Filled with not very many oranges, actually.
No,
Mostly Disney merch.
but a nice man.
There was a nice man
He
in
He was
knew a
there.
lot of
very
stuff about
proud of
oranges.
Yeah.
his business.
Passionate.
Yeah. Bryce, seafood, 1 to 10.
Oh, I had a grand time.
What'd you think?
I had a great time. We had 2 seafood excursions. One is just like, it's one of those places, there's probably a name for it. The 3 of us ate. Joe wanted nothing to do with it. But he was kudos to him. He's a patient young boy. He just sat there at our booth and watched us eat.
He did.
And then he got food after.
Yes.
Yeah.
What a guy. But it's one of those where like you just get in there with your hands.
Mhm.
And it was messy. We're eating
It had
lobster,
the corn. It had the
crab.
potatoes.
Oh,
It
yeah.
had the shrimp. It had the
Crawfish.
shellfish. It had the crawfish.
Oysters?
It had,
Had the
oysters. It
oysters.
had lobster. It had crab.
It had
No,
Right?
just said crab, no lobster.
not
Oh,
lobster.
shoot.
Yeah.
But I mean, and butter.
A lot of butter.
So much butter.
everywhere.
It was good.
So that was really good. I loved that. And then Brittany and I had some really good sushi at like a local place
Yeah.
that was phenomenal.
Yum, yum, yum. At Cocoa Beach.
10 out of 10.
Yep. We did a short photo shoot at Cocoa Beach, so I will post some of those pictures in the video right now. You guys were excellent models for Joe's business.
Wow.
And we got a great friend photo that I love that I want to frame and put in my house.
Ooh.
It's so beautiful.
Well, his business is about to take off.
It is.
Once these photos hit the streets.
It's
Shoot.
true.
People are going to flock.
They are. They're going to be like, I need Orange Float to take photos of me at the beach. Unfortunately, we didn't see any alligators. I know we talked about that a little bit. In the
I don't think we
last
tried
one.
hard enough.
Yeah.
We didn't.
I was really advocating to go to some lakes.
Mm-hmm.
And Lindsay here was the one that seemed the most passionate, yet not willing to drive to the lakes.
Wait, time out. I was
There was that
definitely
one lake that
willing.
was like an hour-long drive.
I
and
was interested.
I brought it up like 4 times, and we didn't do it.
Yeah, I was definitely interested. I think I was feeling maybe you guys weren't interested.
Okay, don't deflect this on me.
This is your fault,
I
Bryce.
don't even remember this conversation happening.
I think we just got a little sleepy,
Yeah.
and we couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Yes. I think we were also disillusioned of how many alligators are in Florida. I think we were
Maybe we were just
hoping-
in the wrong spot of Florida.
Maybe. I think we were just hoping to like see them on the sidewalks.
Yes, that's what I was hoping.
Like as common as a dog or
Yes,
something.
or a
But
deer.
That just wasn't the case.
No.
You know?
They are more sleuthy than the dogs.
That's just what I was thinking. Yeah.
Sleuthy.
So, Lindsay, a high and low of the trip. I'm assuming the low is no gators.
Yep. That was the low.
No gators. High.
I hate saying this, but it's the truth. I think the high was the ice cream place we went to.
That place was.
They were obsessed with this ice
was
cream
so
place, and I had a good
good.
time, but I wasn't like, oh my gosh,
It
the
was
best ice cream
fire.
I've ever had. You guys wanted to go back like every
Oh my
night.
The waffle
gosh.
cones were homemade. It was freshly dipped in chocolate. And the ice cream was just so delicious and creamy. It was amazing.
And it wasn't that expensive.
And it wasn't that expensive.
I was flabbergasted.
Yeah. But I actually figured out I did have a lower low than no alligators.
Mm.
So we went to this very creepy place. Do you remember what it was called?
Oh.
Old Town.
Old Town, near Orlando. I do not recommend this place to anyone.
We went on a weird night.
It was a weird night.
It was rainy.
It was rainy.
No one went.
Not a ton of people were there. It was just creepy. But the worst part was they have this thing that's like a fake man who's getting electrocuted.
Like in a chair.
In a chair? And you walk by and he starts shaking and screaming?
And it looks very real.
It does. He starts kind of just like limp and then they do it. I'm like, how is this entertaining? This is terrifying.
It was like a haunted house thing, but it was just like on the sidewalk.
Yes.
Like with the rest of the shops.
Right.
I had a good time in Old Town.
Oh.
I kind of liked the eeriness of the
I
night.
liked the really weird vibe. Reminded me a lot of like, kind of like the 4-H fair where we grew up. Like that, but creepier.
Yeah, I thought the 4-H fair was better than that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So there was just something about the vibe. It's like, I feel unsettled, but also it's nostalgic because of all the lights and the colors and the rides.
We've brought up the fair 2 chit chats in a row.
The other thing too, we watched Pirates of the Caribbean 1, 2, and 3.
Well, we watched some of it.
Joe watched all of it. Everyone else fell asleep. But that was kind of fun. It felt right in Florida to do that.
And I would like to say Pirates of the Caribbean is my favorite movie over Twilight. That didn't get brought up last time.
Cool. Well, so we took a long drive to Florida. Bryce also just took a long drive to Arkansas. How did that go?
That's true. Yeah, it was a good time. It was a spontaneous trip. I don't frequent Arkansas for fun.
Tell the people how long of a drive that is.
It is almost exactly 8 hours from here to where I was going in Arkansas. There was like this, we could talk about this a little bit too, this weird Microsoft thing. Yeah. This bug that came out. I mean, it's going to be a little
Their
old
update
news.
Did not go well.
Yeah, it's going to be a little old news once this
podcast
comes out. But that was weird and wild. So basically, this pastor, a friend of ours, all his flights got canceled. And all the rental car places turned down people renting cars because everyone was trying to rent cars for one-way trips out of state. So it's like, no, well, we won't have any cars left. So basically, last minute, he needed someone to drive him to Arkansas and back. I was like, okay, I'll do it. And it was a good time. I had a lot of fun connecting with this guy and just learning more about like what he does and stuff. Arkansas is actually pretty, I think.
Oh, pretty.
Yeah, it's pretty. It's hilly.
Oh, okay.
And there's a lot of woods, at least in the place where I was. I had no context for what this state looks like, so I didn't know what to expect. But it was actually a pretty nice drive overall. It went by significantly faster than our Florida drive.
Really?
Which I'm shocked by.
How long was our drive?
Wasn't it like 16 hours?
Yeah, but we went through the night. And did you go through the night?
No.
Okay, so it was through the day.
Yeah. It was on the weekend, so it was a little bit less traffic. But I don't know. I don't know if it was the conversations I was having with this pastor or like
you guys
the drive.
You didn't listen to anything on the drive there.
He was working on some stuff. And then the drive back was just me. Like I took him to the airport and he flew somewhere else. And then I just drove back alone. And it was great. I had a great time.
A lot of alone time.
It was nice.
I'm dying to know if you talked to him about cryptids.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. I didn't. And I really wanted to. It was something that like
I knew you wanted to. I just had a feeling.
I joked with Brittany about like the day before. She was like, please don't do this.
I just didn't want, but then when you explained how you'd approach it, I'm like, okay, fine. I can't control you. I shouldn't even try.
I appreciate that. It didn't come up, which is okay. I just honestly, like we talked about so many other cool things that it just kind of slipped my mind at some point. But now that we have an 8-hour car ride worth of friendship, me and this pastor, I think I'm just going to like blindside him sometime.
Nice.
Well, you got to build love and trust before you can change culture.
Yeah, we got 8 hours of love and trust. I was going to be like, hey, pastor, what do you think about Sasquatch?
Wait, rewind. I said cryptids. I'm guessing a lot of people listening don't even know what that is. So you want to give a little brief? Just brief.
I'll give them some information. Okay. I'll be brief like this, like I was brief about Lord of the Rings. I'll be good. Cryptids are a class of animal or species or entity that is studied that has not technically been proven to exist quite yet. But there is arguably substantiated evidence that it is a real thing, but it's not accepted within that and within scientific community that it is a real living thing. So Sasquatch, like Loch Ness Monster is a really popular one. So all the weird stuff, like that's a cryptid or cryptology, like those kind of critters. So I have a very deep interest in that area. So I like to get people's perspective, especially people who have like an extensive background in Christianity. I like to know what they think about it or if they've ever thought about it before. So it was on my bucket list to talk to this specific pastor about it because I respect him a lot and I want to know what he thinks. And if he's listening to this, somehow he knows I'm talking about him. I want to talk to you about Sasquatch. So maybe in the future we'll do that.
So we did talk about this on the vacation on our long 16-hour drive. We did listen to a podcast about it, so it piqued my interest. And so I'm a little bit more interested in learning more. Curious. But I really like learning about what other people love, so that's why I also enjoy it, because I like hearing your passion.
That's so nice.
Yeah. So, well, one day when you talk to this anonymous pastor, you're going to have to talk about it on the podcast.
I feel like someone's going to hear this and send it to him.
Yeah, I hope so.
Like someone who we know that knows him.
Yep.
Any other updates outside of Florida, out of Arkansas? All of us. I have one. So I tested and interviewed to become a licensed minister with the Assemblies of God, and I passed my test.
Boom.
Yay.
That was very exciting. I passed my interview, so now they send it off to some people to review, but it's probably a approved thing, but I'll know for sure in like September or October. So that's exciting. I was very nervous. So
what does that mean for you, being licensed?
Well, there's 3 different levels with the AG: certified, licensed, ordained. And certified is just the level to feel out, is this your calling, like ministry full-time for the rest of your life? Probably. You never know what will happen. But so license is if you're like, yep, vocational ministry is like for me. And so that's where I'm at currently. I have no idea if I'll go to ordained. You can stay at licensed if you want to. But it just opens a lot of doors, a lot of connections. So a lot of accountability as well. Like the AG takes care of you and checks in on you and all of that. So we'll see. But I'm glad. I hate interviews. I was very anxious about that.
Was the test as hard as you thought it would be?
No, I didn't think the test would be that hard. Yeah, because the first level, it's like more about biblical knowledge. The second level is more about make sure you understand the AG and what you're saying yes to. Yeah. And it's open book essentially. So you still need to know your stuff because you don't have enough time to like look up every answer, but it's more about the bylaws and the history and all of that, which I appreciate. They want you to know like what you're joining. So no, I wasn't too worried about the exam, other than I'm just not a very good test taker. I can get test anxiety, but I think I was more nervous for the interview, so I wasn't nervous for the test as much.
So speaking of church stuff, you didn't grow up in the Assemblies of God, right?
Short answer, no. I went to a youth group for a while. It was one of the healthier churches I had gone to growing up. I really enjoyed it, but there's a spectrum, of course. Yes. So yeah, I got lucky there.
Yeah. That's cool. I'm always curious because Chi Alpha, even though it's a Assemblies of God ministry, a lot of people, at least at Indiana University, come from all over the place. Like a lot of them aren't even Christians when they start coming. But then it's like,
right.
Lots of different denominations. So it's always interesting to hear what people think about the Assemblies of God when they're not from that background. So yeah, I was just curious if you, as you were studying like the history and stuff, did anything surprise you or interest you?
I think for me, growing up in churches that were more Pentecostal, but they weren't connected to any fellowship or denomination. I just saw a lot of unhealth. And not that there can't be unhealth in AG churches, of course. But I guess learning about the bylaws and things and systems they have in place and leadership they have in place, I was really grateful because I'm like, man, I wish I'd been in a church that had that kind of accountability. And I'm sure different districts and stuff have different levels of getting healthier and all of that. But I was more assured reading those things.
I liked learning about it too, because I didn't come from a AG background, so it was all new to me.
Yeah.
But we actually went to a Assemblies of God church that Bryce and Brittany go to this past Sunday. I went to the same church they go to because Bryce was driving that one anonymous pastor. And so Joe, my husband, filled in for him for drumming. And so I went, and it was like a time of like remembering why I like the AG. Mm-hmm. Again, no denomination is perfect, and I admire different things about different denominations, but I appreciate just the emphasis on the Holy Spirit and letting like there be time for God to minister to our hearts. And this church like did that, especially in the worship time. Mm-hmm. And so that was one thing in Chi Alpha that I desperately needed. I needed to know that God was close. I needed to know that he cared about me and that he cared about my thoughts and that he wanted to interact with me. And so, I think that's pretty cool.
So good.
Mm-hmm.
Any updates for you other than Florida?
Well, I don't have many updates, but I have something that's going to be happening soon that I'm excited about. So tomorrow I'm driving up to Chicago because my younger brother, just got his PhD a few weeks ago.
Wow.
And so we're having a party for him.
Yeah.
And I'm very proud of him, and he was pretty nervous. He's done so much work, and it's just
What's his PhD in?
Computer science.
Wow.
So he's very smart, and I don't understand what he does, but something with computers and science and that.
And that's why he has the PhD.
Exactly. And I don't. Yeah. So I'm excited. I'm going to see him. I'm going to see my other brother. A lot of family are going to come together for the party. And my parents have a pool. So I'm excited Friday to just lay.
Have they always had a pool?
In the pool. Since I was like 10.
Oh, okay. I feel like I never hear you talk about
I don't go there as much in the summer. So
True.
I don't get to like enjoy it as much. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to that. My cousin Katie, who also listens to the podcast. Shout out Katie.
Hi, Katie.
She's a massage therapist.
Oh, I met Katie.
You did meet Katie. Yeah. She gives the best massages in the world. And I'm not just saying that because I'm her cousin. Literally, I plan my trips around getting a massage.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking forward to that. And then we have a wedding on Sunday for our friend Jaden, and you're in the wedding.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll see you. And I'll see you.
It's true.
I'm excited for that. I feel like I've been experiencing more joy lately, which I'm really happy about. This year's been
That's great.
Very hard. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what it is. I just think God is helping me to have joy and enjoy life and enjoy where I'm at. So that's really great.
Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So today we wanted to talk about books because we are readers. As Chi Alpha likes to say, readers are leaders, or leaders are readers.
I've not heard them say that.
Really?
I've heard the saying.
Okay, yeah. I've heard it at conferences and stuff.
Oh,
but, we just kind of want to tell each other what we've been learning and reading. Why don't you go first, Bryce?
Oh, well, certainly. So I'm currently reading a book that I have read before, but I'm trying to refresh myself on it, because it will be pretty relevant to my life in the coming months. It's called The Freedom Fight by Ted Shimmer. So it's a book, basically the whole thing is about sex addictions. And I don't think it's really directed towards one specific area as far as age group or demographic or anything. It's pretty broad overall. But I got certified as a leader through their organization last year. So reading the book was just part of my curriculum for the class, and I really enjoyed it. And this upcoming year, I'm going to be incorporating it a bit more into the ministry that we're connected to. There's a lot of holistic approach. I mean, it's all rooted in biblical foundation of like recovery and identity and purity. But I appreciate it because there is a ton of science and psychology in the book. And I'm just very fascinated by a lot of that, like how the brain works and how it corresponds with like people's actions and desires and interests.
Yeah.
So it's interesting for me to read just in general because that stuff is very fascinating to me. But it's also been fun to read again because I just know how applicable it's going to be within our ministry context. Like we work with college students. It's been really great. I recommend anybody read it. It's really practical for equipping a person to understand like the in and outs of addiction in general. And I mean, of course, it's directly corresponding with sexual addiction, sexual brokenness, but a lot of the principles and standards talking about like the effect addiction has on the mind and the body and people's relationships, it's pretty general across the board with other substances. So if you're interested in any form of like brain science, I'd highly recommend it, especially if you're interested in it through a biblical lens.
Yeah.
Like, oh, Jesus has been talking about this stuff forever, and science is just now starting to catch up and show us what's real and what's not about how our brains function.
So is there something you've read the last couple days that stood out to you?
Right now, I just finished reading through, like the chapters are generally pretty short. So there were 6 chapters back to back, and it's the 6 roots of sex addiction, kind of according to their compilation of information and data. So let me see if I can remember them on the spot here. Sexualized society, addicted brain, shame, trauma. Oh goodness.
There's 2 more?
Isolation. There's definitely one more that's just not coming to my mind at the moment. Oh, negative emotions. So those are the 6. Yeah. So I just finished reading kind of these chapters back to back, and it's just going into more and more detail about how deeply connected they are to the addiction cycle in someone's mind. So that's been great. And I'm realizing, like, just in general, like anything I'm trying to process in my life, I have a lot of trouble with negative emotions and how to categorize them well and how to deal with them well. My family context, we didn't really talk about processing emotions and feelings a lot. So I love it too because it's just very insightful for my own life. So that's been a hard thing that's been sticking out at me lately. It's just like, yeah, I still got to figure out how to deal with my negative emotions.
Right.
What do you feel like you're most excited for this year with the freedom fight?
I love seeing people experience practical tools. Like when someone can wrap their mind around a concept that could directly apply to their life in the moment. Because it's easy to, like, when you're dreaming about stuff and you're just you're coming up with concepts, and people who have really intense visionary mindsets, it's fun to dream, but I'm always like, okay, but what about like right now? How does this apply to my life right now?
Yep.
How could I make this useful tomorrow?
Right.
And if there's not an answer for that question, I'm not very interested in the big visionary stuff. But when I see people get to, they're exposed to like content that actually has practicality to it, and you can see the little light bulbs come off of, oh, I could do that, or I could try this, or oh, that's like me. That describes who I am. I feel very seen or understood in this way. So I've already seen that with this topic and with this content from this book. Like, I'm trying to share it with people that I work in ministry with. So I'm excited to continue to see that, see young men specifically have hope about breaking cycles in their life, like unwanted addictions and cycles in their life. So that's going to be really fun.
Nice. What about you, Brittany?
So I brought my book because I've been struggling with a foggy brain lately. And also, I'm not very far, but sometimes a day or two goes in between reading it. So I'm reading Liturgy of the Ordinary, Sacred Practices in Everyday Life. And I have a very different background than you, Lindsay. You're a little bit more familiar with a liturgical, is that how you say it? Yeah. Church, growing up in the Catholic Church. Whereas I grew up in more Pentecostal setting. There's just a lot less like tradition or sacraments, I guess. I mean, we do water baptism and we do communion. And then those are like the only things that are like look the same almost every time. So anywho, I was curious about that. Also loved that it's not a thick book. And I had just come off of studying for my exam that I just talked about. So I was like, I just want something short. So basically it's talking about not so much like liturgy within like a Sunday service. If you were, say, in a Catholic church at Mass or some other like denominations and stuff do that too. It's more about like the daily things. Like I think the first one she talks about is making her bed. And then the chapter I'm in right now, it's about her lost keys. And so again, I'm not far, so I haven't even finished the chapter on losing keys, but she talks about like, you know, she wants to go to the grocery store and then she has a meeting. And so, you know, she's getting ready for the day and then she can't find her keys. And so she goes through that process of like, okay, let me retrace my steps. Okay, who am I blaming for this? The kids, did they take them? Did my husband move them? Oh my gosh, why can't find them? Getting really irritated and frustrated and then like giving up and then going back to step one. And so her just talking about like realizing she had an idol of ease in her life. And so I'm eager to see where this chapter goes because I haven't gotten to the liturgical part of it. But the first chapter I read, it's all about making the bed. And something I love that she was talking about, we'll see if I can find it. It says, in the creation story, God entered chaos and made order and beauty. In making my bed, I reflected that creative act in the tiniest, most ordinary way. In my small chaos, I made small order. And I'm just a person where I really struggle with repetitive, unwanted tasks. I feel like that's probably a common human thing to not want to constantly clean the kitchen or constantly do the laundry, but there's something about it that just weighs so heavy on me that I'm like so frustrated by it that I have to keep doing this thing. Yeah. And she's taking more of a liturgical like view of those tasks and how it's like a celebration and like a reflection of God taking chaos and creating order through the creation story. Like you're kind of doing that in a very, very small way. And like doing something as simple as making the bed is like worshiping God and like setting your mind on him. And so I'm sure I'll go into more things as I read the book and how it does that. But it's been really good. And she has a very different background from me. I think I told you guys she's Anglican. So yeah, more liturgical church than I know. So it's just so cool to like learn from someone with different perspectives and like thoughts about how to worship God.
I love that. I love when we can connect what God has done with our everyday life. And that's like one really cool connection is the chaos and the order. I did a prayer retreat like years ago. I haven't gone on a prayer retreat in a while, but one thing I did was I brought a book similar to that, but it had like liturgy in it where it was like you say something and then it's supposed to be with a group. So like you say something and then they say something and you're just like reading it and you're kind of reading prayers. And at first I'm like, this isn't as spiritual as like me coming up with my own prayers. And the book was helping me to realize like that's not true. Like I actually like could focus on the words more as I was reading them and like internalize them even more. I really like having that balance. Like I think it's good to have both.
Yeah.
I'm interested in like you processing the balance because you and I come from pretty similar backgrounds, spiritual backgrounds. And I've always felt a tension point between like trying to invite God into your normal everyday life versus things becoming very legalistic and rigid.
Yeah.
And I can lean towards the rigid a lot in a way that does not feel good. So I'd love to look at like keeping the the kitchen clean in our apartment as this really profound spiritual reflection of God's desire to take chaos and turn into order. But I just get annoyed by myself and how it's like that's a characteristic of God maybe that's in me, that let's take something chaotic and turn it into, like, bring it into order. That's the image of God coming through us in a way. But it doesn't feel good for me a lot of the times. So I'm interested in, like, what that's going to be like for you as you're exploring this idea of, like, these things could celebrate the goodness of God and things that God has done versus, I hate doing this. This feels like a chore. This feels like a burden.
Just for me, like, going back to what you said, inviting God into, like, the everyday things. I guess I thought inviting God into the everyday things is like talking to him while I do stuff. And this is pointing more towards, like, I can't remember how it's worded, but she basically talks about how your habit and your rituals create who you are in this world. Wow. And so that's awesome. We think it's like these, I don't know, maybe bigger things. Like, if you happen to be a leader in the church, you go lead a core group or something. That creates who I am. But what do you do more often? Brush your teeth. Hopefully you do that twice a day. Like, she's just talking about how these little habits actually create who you are and how you think, and, like, if you're in this world or of it, kind of a thing. But, like, yes, I still want to talk to God while I'm doing stuff, but I thought, oh, if God's in the everyday, do I just talk to him constantly? But this just feels like more of a, everything is like reflecting God. Yeah. So I don't even know if it has to be like celebratory every time. I don't know that I have to, like, be in a good mood or, like, want to do it. But whether I'm in a good mood, a bad mood, or indifferent, it still reminds me of God.
I like what you're saying. So it's a posture that's bringing you into remembrance through the everyday tasks. So we're doing tasks that a normal human being has to do day to day. And the posture of our heart is, this reminds me of God. This reminds me of
I think so.
God.
Again, I'm on chapter 3.
Yeah.
Something I just read that I hope I don't do a poor job sharing is she was talking about prayer. And for her, she had to learn how to get on her knees before she could learn how to pray. So her example was like, she thought she had no problem talking to God until she went through a really hard season in her life. She didn't go into detail what all that entailed, but suddenly she had no more words. Yeah. And so what do you do when you don't have any more words? You get on your knees and you cry. You get on your knees and you sit and not say anything. And that is your prayer. Yeah. And so she's like, for her and her in the Anglican church, I guess, from her perspective, like, okay, well, I've taught my body what to do through habit, through ritual, through liturgy. So it's almost like muscle memory. Like, okay, I was relying on being able to say things to pray, but I can't rely on that when I'm heartbroken and I have no more things to say. But I've trained my body to pray. And I just thought that was super interesting.
I think that's very just uncommon in Western American culture. Western American Christian culture. We're so intellectual, and that's not a bad thing. But I think a lot of us think our full relationship with God is all about our thoughts and our talking to him and thinking about him. But, like, I don't know, with listening to some other podcasts that are maybe a little more similar to this, like in ancient Jewish culture, like, there was more than just the thoughts. It was like you said, the body, something with your body, right, who you're being formed into with what you're doing. I don't know. It's really, that's hard for us. That's hard for me to understand, because I'm so focused on, like, thinking the right things and doing the right things. And I've personally had that experience where I couldn't say anything. I had nothing to say. Right. I was so broken, and it was scary. And I'm like, wow, I can't talk to God right now. And that's what I put my hope in our relationship, is me saying things. And now I just have to really trust that you're here, and you're here with me in the tears and in the emptiness, and being like, I've got nothing, but I want to be with you. on the other side of the whole order chaos thing, I'm going to shout out another podcast called the Bema Podcast. So I think it's episode 1. Like, he talks about Genesis and the creation and the seventh day of rest. And so I think there's a balance with like the order and the chaos and like cleaning and stuff.
Yeah.
And also
true.
like on your Sabbath, there's going to be things that are undone and you can be okay with it because God rested,
So
even
good.
though there was still chaos on the earth.
Yeah.
You know?
And how God, like, he's God. He didn't need rest. Like, he modeled that because he knew we would need rest and we need someone to model after. So I think that's cool too.
Well, the book I'm reading right now is not spiritual. It's
That's
I don't know what the word is, non-spiritual book, but it's a memoir or like a autobiography or autobiography by this guy named Niall DeMarco.
Okay.
And it's called Deaf Utopia. And Joe was kind of intimidated because the cover is a photo of him and he's a male model.
Oh,
And Joe was like, "Why'd you get that book?"
that makes me want to look it up. Is he clothed?
He's clothed.
Okay.
Oh no, that would be a little.
I don't know, how far is this go?
I probably wouldn't pick up. No, he's fully clothed. He's just a very attractive, like objectively attractive man, and he's just kind of standing there. But he's deaf. And the reason I picked up this book was because years ago, my sophomore year of college, I was rooming with my friend Emily, and we watched America's Next Top Model.
Yes, I've seen that season.
I don't even know what it is, but it's guys and girls, and
It's the guy that's deaf.
he's deaf, and he won.
Yeah.
He won the season. And so the book is about his life. It's about him being on America's Next Top Model.
I follow him on Instagram.
Really?
Yeah.
And he actually was in Dancing with the Stars and won that as well afterwards. I didn't know that. But it's been very eye-opening to me as someone who really hasn't encountered many deaf people in my life.
Sure.
And just what I've been just like envisioning what that would be like for me. Like, I kind of am now thinking about life, like, what if I couldn't hear anything? And how would that affect me? And one thing I thought that was really interesting was when he goes on America's Next Top Model, he's like, "Is America's Next Top Model ready for a deaf person?" And the person who was talking to him was like, "Yes, we're ready." And then one of the first competitions, like, they were going to have an interpreter, but he got sick or something and they couldn't get a backup. So like lip reading is harder than us hearing people think. So like he's like trying to read the lips of the people who are talking. It's really hard. And then he has to try to like model based on something he doesn't fully understand what they're even talking about. And then he ended up doing like pretty well in the in that competition. I don't know if he won that one. It's just eye-opening to me. And I really appreciate too that like he doesn't look as being deaf as like bad. Like he thinks of it as a culture, kind of like what we talked about in the last episode with Kenji, of like, this thing is beautiful. Like he's like the 5th generation deaf in his family, and he's a twin. And when him and his brother were born, his mom and dad asked like, "Can he hear?" And the doctor was like, "No." And they were like, "Oh, that's great."
Wow.
And he said like if he could hear, they would have been happy too. It wasn't like, "Oh, we only want a deaf kid." But again, they're like celebrating this aspect. And as someone who is very expressive, I feel like I would enjoy learning sign language and like interacting with a deaf person because I show a lot with my face and with my hands. But again, this isn't a Christian book. There are some kind of inappropriate parts of it. But I think for me, learning about this other culture that I don't really know or understand was worth maybe reading a few uncomfortable chapters. And again, it's not like graphic or anything. He just has a different lifestyle than me.
Sure.
And that's okay. So yeah, it was cool.
The idea of like these parents of this guy you're talking about being happy that he's deaf. It's like, whoa, that's not a way I would think about it or perspective I've had. But again, that's a lifestyle I don't know anything about and I don't have any experience with. So it almost kind of reminds me of the book you're reading in a way of like, how can this be something we could celebrate God in a way? But yeah, it's a challenging thing to think about because it's something I don't know a ton about.
It's wild to be talking about this on a very, like, people have to listen to this podcast to hear it.
I've been thinking about that a lot too.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think too about the Enneagram. I'm an Enneagram 3, so I'm the achiever, and I'm very motivated by like achieving things, doing things, being good at things. And I think one of my greatest fears is like being disabled in a way where like I can't move as fast as I used to, whether that's like hearing loss or literally I can't run or walk or whatever. And so this has helped me to kind of think about it like, wow, I put a lot of value in like my being able, I guess. And I don't know, maybe it's something I could talk to God about of like, okay, if this is taken away, like, am I less worthy as a person?
Right. I mean, the less you can do, the more you have to rely on God. And that's so opposite of what we want, but I don't know. I think it would only strengthen your relationship with God if you let it.
I really, honestly, and life is seasonal. I'm at a stage right now where I just don't want to read very much, in all honesty. I think that's why, like, reading through the Freedom Fight right now, it's like, I feel like I kind of have to. So it's been helping me keep up on it. But I want to read more often. So maybe we can close with that. If we have people who are listening right now who are like, I can't remember the last time I read a book and I really don't want to, what do? I'm in that category.
For me, I read before I go to bed. That's the only time I read. And it honestly helps me fall asleep because it, like, I don't know, slows my mind down or something. So literally, I just accept that that's all that I'm going to do, even if it's 10 minutes. So that's what I would say is like, let go of this expectation that you have to read it like every day for hours. Like, if you haven't been reading, it's better to just start small with something, and maybe find a time or place that, I don't know, that you enjoy it. Like, if you like to read in the morning, give yourself 10 minutes in the morning and do that. And then find something you're into. So like, there was a season I read a lot of nonfiction, and it was helpful to learn a lot, but I kind of needed a break. And I also wanted to just be like creative and like just listen to or read a story. And so I would say just think about what interests you and what would be enjoyable to start with and start there.
I like that. Britt?
Well, I love reading. Literally, not this past Monday, but the Monday before, I spent my entire day. So our boss gifted us all a book, told us to read it. So I spent the entire 9 to 5 reading that book. And I was like a chapter away from finishing it from when I started in the morning. So I would read for a job if I could. So I can't fully relate to how to answer the question. I think, what is your motivation to desire to read? Is it conviction? Is it to read your Bible? Is it to read maybe some books that help you understand the word and faith? Ask the Holy Spirit to help you want to read. And then slowly, like you were saying, Lindsay, build that discipline. Maybe it's a chapter before bed. Maybe it's 10 minutes before whatever. Maybe it's not a conviction and you just have this weird guilt that you think you should read. Don't read. Right. Listen to an audiobook if you want to. Listen to podcasts. Like, you don't have to read. You know, when people first heard scripture, it was actually through people speaking it. They didn't know how to read words on a page. So you don't have to look at a page and read to fulfill some, guilt thing.
That's so good. I have been in a slight rut in my devotional time with the Lord. And so I decided to start listening to the Psalms while I walk. Like, I just kind of walk around my neighborhood. And it's been so good. It's been so good to break it up, and then I get something out of it that I didn't before.
Right.
And then I talk to God about it. And it's fabulous.
And I also like what Lindsay was touching on. Like, maybe when you first tried to start reading, you were in a category of books that weren't for you. Try something different. I mean, look into the book. Make sure you're not reading anything crazy that goes against your morals, but try different. Try fiction. Try nonfiction. Yeah. There's so many subcategories too.
I do like that. Being okay with, this is just what I'm interested in right now.
Yeah.
And checking that out. Because I feel I have a lot of hard lines in my life that I don't enjoy having. And I'm trying to work through, like, let God soften my heart towards myself in a lot of ways. But a lot of those hard lines are time management and not wasting time. So if there's something that I'm interested in, but it's just an irrelevant interest of just, I wonder what that's like. Like, I could watch this documentary or read this thing. If somewhere in my mind it's trying to calculate and categorize information, if it's not passing through the filters of this is relevant and will be important to you long term, then it's like, don't waste your time on it, which is dumb. That's a dumb filter to have. So I think that's why I don't read, because all the things that would be in that category of very fruitful long term and stuff, I don't want to read it right now because it's heavy. It's a lot of heavy stuff. So it's just, well, I won't. I guess I'm just not going to read right now at all.
Yeah. And that's interesting that it's pointed towards reading, because you're not like that with like video games or other hobbies, you know?
Yeah.
Reading can just be a hobby. It doesn't have to be all self-help.
Yeah, that's interesting. I guess I haven't thought of it that way before. Like reading for fun. And I know that sounds dumb, but that's just not, like, I didn't have friends growing up that's like, oh, this new book is out. Like, have you read it yet? This new series is out.
Right. I grew up with a mom who reading was her hobby, and that's all she ever did. We're watching a movie, she's reading in the same room.
Yeah, this is a perfect ending to our episode of Grace for the Tryhard, because I feel like that's a great example of feeling like a tryhard. Like, I need to be doing things productive. I need to only read when it's deep and, you know, life-changing. And literally, I talked about my younger brother earlier in this episode, but I called him on the phone a few weeks ago, and I told him about this season of life where I was just reading all this heavier stuff that was good. And my counselor encouraged me to just like watch The Office or watch a show that was just not spiritual or heavy or whatever, because you just need that. You need that balance, you know? And that's why we have these episodes right here, because we're trying to like have that balance of like, we talk about something heavy and specific, and then we just have friends chit-chatting,
just hanging out
on a couch, maybe between two bees.
Maybe.
I don't like that. I'm sorry, Bryce. I let it simmer for the whole episode. And
maybe BLB.
I like that a little bit more.
I do. BLB.
It reminds me of an MLM though.
We'll workshop
it.
it.
Well, this was a fun time, guys. Thanks for sharing your book stuff. I got a lot out of it. I hope you guys listening or watching got a lot out of this. And we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Love you. Bye.
That's how
Smart list.
Yeah.
Bye. There. Thank you so much for listening to the Grace for the Tryhard podcast. I hope you feel encouraged, empowered, challenged, and that you know that you are so loved by God. Feel free to subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you're listening, as well as rate and leave a review. Talk to you soon.